The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, the fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one that belonged to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both boats so that the boats were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In light of what's been in the news for the past couple of weeks or so regarding the Archdiocese of Los Angeles and some of the reports on Cardinal Mahoney and his treatment of sexual abuse crisis of priests back from the late 1980s, I want to direct some words towards that issue. Understanding that you may be focusing a bit on what the Catholic Church does now since 2002 in response to that, and also looking at what we can do in societies and families to root out child abuse, to make sure that we've learned a lot from this and that we can help victims to heal as we bring this out more into the light. First thing to say, and to always keep in mind during this homily and any other time, is that the abuse of children is always wrong. So there's no negotiating that, right? It's always been sinful, and now in most societies it's criminal as well. It's always been wrong. It devastates the lives of the victims, sometimes destroys the lives of victims. And there's no excuse for it, good, bad, or otherwise. No excuse, no justification for the abuse of children. So keep that always in your mind. I know I'm speaking with some of you are getting questions and criticisms maybe from family, from non-Catholics, from people in other Christian churches, or just from people that you run into contact with, kind of asking, so how can you be Catholic? In the light of all that's happened recently, what's coming out in the newspapers, how can you be Catholic? How can you belong to the Catholic Church? And I know some have told me it brings a sense of a little bit of shame into their own lives, or at least they don't know how to respond to that question. They don't know what to say in the face of that. Some have told me that, this is isolated individuals, my faith in the Catholic Church and God is not shaken. I know these are some people that do this. I know that there's child abuse in other organizations as well, that my faith is not shaken. But there are some who don't know how to respond, and some who are feeling a sense of shame because of belonging to the Catholic Church. Around this time in 2002, news broke in the Archdiocese of Boston and then later around the United States regarding the sexual abuse of children by Catholic priests, mostly centered over the past 50 years or so. That's when the lawsuits were starting from periods of those time, that abuse. And as shocking as that news was to us at the time, it was maybe more shocking and more disturbing for many people, the fact that some bishops knew that their priests were abusing children and did nothing about it. Maybe they covered it up, didn't want bad press for the diocese, didn't want any kind of criminal investigations from the police, moved priests from one parish to another, or in some cases even move a priest out of his diocese to another diocese without informing the other diocese that this priest has a history of abusing children. So that's almost more disturbing, I think, to many Catholics, not just that the abuse went on, but that it was covered up. by some of our leadership. There were lawsuits that were filed against dioceses and against priests, many priests who went to prison, as they should have, on account of their crimes, as any other citizen would have. About 6 dioceses in the countries have gone bankrupt because of payments and lawsuits to the victims of child abuse. In the spring of 2002, the United States bishops reacted immediately by adopting the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People. And there were some essential norms, guidelines, and laws that went about how to handle these cases, how we're supposed to react to these cases. It's been revised a couple of times, not in huge substance. It was approved as law for the United States, church law for the United States, by the Vatican in 2006. And it says, in short, we continue to have a special care for and a commitment to reaching out to the victims of sexual abuse and their families. The damage caused by sexual abuse of minors is devastating and long-lasting. We apologize to them for the grave harm that has been inflicted on them, and we offer our help for the future. So the Charter and its norms included many provisions. Among other things, 1, to promote the healing and reconciliation for victims. Always uppermost in our minds in abuse are the ones who are abused. How do we help you heal? How do we help you reconcile? Secondly, to ensure an effective response to allegations. Okay, as a church, we didn't respond well all the time in the past. How are we going to make sure that we respond correctly to allegations of sexual abuse from now on? Thirdly, to ensure accountability. How do we measure ourselves and watchdog ourselves to make sure we're protecting children? Then finally, to protect the faithful in the future. Not just weeding out the problem and responding to it, but how can we be proactive to protect families and to protect children in the future? Since 2002, some lawsuits have continued. Still news trickles out of priests who have abused children. Most of it's all pre-2002, but there are a couple of cases since 2002. The United States bishops hired a research team from the John Jay College and Criminal Institute, to investigate the sexual abuse crisis in the United States. The John Jay team is not Catholic. They were hired by the U.S. bishops, but to do an independent audit and investigation. Their first report came out in February of 2004 and was called The Nature and Scope of Sexual Abuse of Minors by Priests and Deacons in the United States from 1950 to 2002. And so that study went into how many allegations, how many people abused, how many priests were involved in this. So the whole scope of that. The second report came out in May of 2011, and I actually gave a short little workshop on it for those who wanted a couple of years ago when it came out, about a year and a half ago. And that was on the causes and the context of sexual abuse of minors by Catholic priests in the United States from 1950 to 2010. So try to find some kind of causes. So why was this happening? What was going on? Those were the 2 studies that were commissioned. There's a third one as well. The third and final leg is due to come out in a couple of years. Most recently, of course, we've heard in the papers the news from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles about memos between Cardinal Roger Mahoney and Bishop Thomas Curry. He was then the vicar for clergy in charge of priest personnel issues. How they knowingly moved some priests, covered things up, and did not turn priests over to authorities to avoid some bad press and criminal charges against the priests. Again, most of those cases mentioned from Los Angeles were from the late 1980s. I don't remember seeing anything since 2002 at all. Again, 2002 is the landmark year because that's when the U.S. bishops adopted the charter for all of the United States. We should have responded better before that, but since 2002, it's very, very clear and vivid in our minds. And so there's a lot of hurt I think Catholics in Los Angeles and even here and farther away, that our church leaders didn't do a lot to stop the abuse by either turning the priests over to police or by dismissing them, letting them go. So since 2002, what does the Diocese of San Bernardino do? And what we do is pretty much similar to what any other diocese in this country does. And as I give you a list of certain things that we do now, I want you to maybe think about what other religions and other churches do about this. Think about what other government institutions do about the sexual abuse of children. Think about what your own workplace does or doesn't do. So I think the Catholic Church in America does a lot now in response to this. So that there is something to respond to and something to feel proud about for being Catholic. So, every allegation of sexual abuse by a priest turned into our diocese investigated. The priest is put on a leave of absence right away. There's outreach to the victim right away. They meet with someone from our diocese to give them pastoral care, offering them counseling and anything that they might need in order to confront the issue and to overcome it. There is an investigation, a quick initial investigation, to see if the allegation against the priest is credible or not. If it's not credible, it's dismissed. But if it's credible, they do some investigating. And before a recommendation is made to Bishop Gerald Barnes, it goes before the Diocesan Review Committee, something that just about every diocese in the country has. That committee is composed of about 10 people, almost all of them lay people like yourselves, expert in criminal justice, psychology, schools, and the abuse of children. Mostly lay people. They recommend to the bishop whether or not there's something credible here or not. If the allegation has any sense of credibility, everything is turned over to the police right away, and the diocese cooperates with all police investigations at that time. The priests will end up facing criminal trials, may serve time in prison, as some of our priests have been served time in prison. Some are there, some they release when their time is up. Like any other citizen who abuses children. And the priest as well, the case is turned over to Rome, as the charter says that we must do, in accordance with church law. So the case is sent over to Rome. Rome may send it back to our diocese. Different punishments may come to the priest from Rome. Could be a life of prayer and penance if the priest is now elderly and the abuse is in the past. Could be defrocked, although that's not the proper canonical term, but dismissed from the clerical state. He's no longer a priest. In any event, regardless of what happens, any credible allegation against the priest means he'll never work in the Catholic Church in this country ever again as a priest. That's part of the zero tolerance policy from the Charter of Bishops from 2002. It's one strike and you're out. There is no second chance when it comes to credible allegations of sexual abuse by a priest. It's just done forever. Secondly, and again, keeping in mind what your place of employment might do and what other Christian religions do in churches. Secondly, fingerprinting and background checks since 2002. This goes through the FBI and Department of Justice. This is for every priest, every deacon, every church employee, every Catholic school employee, and all volunteers with children. They look for, again, the Department of Justice and FBI, they look for crimes of violence, sex, or drugs. And if it's notified to the diocese, that person doesn't work with children at all. Since 2002, in our diocese alone, we've done fingerprints and background checks on 46,211 people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And some of you have fingerprinted because you want to work with children in our parish. You have to have that done first, that background check. Thirdly, safe environment training. This is for every priest and every adult who works with children in our diocese. The content is about how to make our parishes and schools safe places for children. Kids are never left alone with just one adult. There's always two or more. Windows are put indoors, like in confessionals and in offices. Doors are left open when there's a teacher alone with children. There's a parish plan on how we're going to make this a safe environment for our children. This training must be renewed every 5 years. I go every 5 years to have the training renewed. Safe environment training. Fourthly, the Code of Pastoral Conduct, explicit guidelines in our diocese for how we are to behave professionally, morally, and pastorally as church employees. Your place of employment may also have a code of conduct. Fifthly, mandated reporting, the California Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting Laws. Since 1997, clergy in California are mandated reporters of child abuse. If I have a reasonable suspicion that a child has been abused, I have to report that to Child Protective Services or law enforcement, is where I need to turn that into. So, we're trained in reporting this, making the phone call and turning the form into the proper government authorities as well. Next, sexual harassment training. Every 2 years for all priests and supervisors, according to the law of California, if you're a supervisor, you have to go through this as well in your place of work. We have to be trained on sexual harassment, what it is, how we avoid this, and how we find it in the workplace, and how we don't put up with it. Virtus training. For all the children in our religious education classes in our Catholic schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, they receive training in safe touching, stranger danger, self-protection training, teaches them how to keep themselves safe from abuse, how to be on alert for that as well. And I don't think any public schools, at least around here, teach anything like this about children being aware of abuse and being safe. I'm not sure. Maybe there are some public schools that do. But if your child's in Catholic schools or our religious education programs in this diocese, they'll be trained on that. Next, Restoring Me monthly retreats, and also AMAC retreats, adults molested as children. These take place every month, every other month. Very, very few people who attend these retreats were molested by a priest. Usually it was by a coach, a teacher, or one of their relatives, because we offer help to victims of all child sexual abuse, not just by priests, because there wouldn't be enough. There wouldn't be enough, because this is something that's more endemic in our society. So we offer those retreats to anybody who wants to attend those retreats, whoever was abused as a child. Next, requests for counseling can be submitted to our diocese, and Catholic Charities works with people to help them, the victims of abuse, to get some kind of counseling, trying to turn their lives around, trying to confront this and overcome. Next, we have a diocesan hotline, 24 hours a day, to report child abuse at any time, whether done by a priest, but by any kind of child abuse whatsoever. The diocese gets inquiries, actually. Other organizations have been calling our diocese asking, what should we do to respond to child abuse? Because you're on the forefront of this, and you have a good plan for responding. Other institutions, non-religious, come to us asking for our guidance and help now. How that's completely turned around, right, in 11 years or so. We've learned the hard way, but we've learned. Next, there's no transfer of priests between dioceses without background checks. And no priest can come into another parish in our diocese from outside to do a wedding, a baptism, a funeral, a talk, or anything without a background check and also safe environment training in a letter from his diocese. So if your relative who's a priest wants to say Mass at St. Francis, he can't do it unless he has the background check done and safe environment training. We don't let any other priests in, even to do simple sacraments or ceremonies. There's no more shuffling priests around between dioceses. Tangentially, but also as a result of this, our children now learn about bullying in school and its dangers. We have some classes on safe awareness, internet and telecommunication safety for children and teens, and an electronic media policy in our diocese when it comes to internet and some of the social media things and how that can be abused and used for the wrong things. This is what our church, our Catholic Church, does. I don't know if your place of employment offers some things like this, or any other institution, government institution offers anything like this, but I think that no other church, no other organization does more than the Catholic Church in America to help confront child abuse, to weed it out, to offer help to the victims. We do a lot. This is what we've done since 2002. Yes, it happened too late. It happened too late. Should have always kind of been in place, should have always been confronting the issue this way. But we've learned since then from our mistakes. Related issues. The statute of limitations for child abuse. After a certain time, if the abuse is older, if it took place in the past, there's a statute of limitations in California law where you can no longer bring the abuser to court, no longer sue him or bring it up for criminal or civil suits. California is looking at doing away with that law for private institutions. Other states have done the same thing, have tried back and forth. Some have been successful, some not. The California bill, as it reads now, in part it says that the best way to stop hidden predators from hurting more children is by identifying them. And certainly we would agree with that as the Catholic Church. We need to stop child abuse. We need to identify abusers, especially predatory abusers. The problem with the bill is that it's just directed towards private institutions. In some way, this is directed towards the Catholic Church. It's not for public schools. It's not for public institutions. It's not for public hospitals or care home. Not for any of that. It's just directed towards private institutions. And certainly if the best way to stop predators from hurting more children is by identifying them, that's true not just in private institutions, but public institutions as well. But biased the way that the bill is written and trying to pass. I bring it up because you may hear the California bishops opposing that law, because it's directed towards the Catholic Church when we need to root out child abuse in all of society, not just in private institutions. Bishop Barnes, our bishop, is concerned for your faith. This is an issue that's very, very important to him. It has been forever, as long as he's been bishop. He's concerned for your faith in many ways. Your faith in God and your faith in the Catholic Church. Concerned that your faith still stays strong in the face of this, even though it shakes all of our faith, one way or another. The feelings and the emotions on this issue are strong, whatever they might be. Whether it shook your faith or not, the emotions and the feelings are strong on this topic. Bishop Barnes is also concerned about moving forward in the sense of looking at child abuse that happens in our families, the most common environment for child abuse, and trying to root it out of our families, bring it before society, and to stop the cycle of abuse in families. He's very concerned that we respond to the issues and abuse that might be taking place in the families in our parishes. He says that our mandate from the Lord Jesus is to care for the most weak and vulnerable, our children. And if we don't do that, then we're not fulfilling our mandate. This is what we need to do. 1 out of about 4 women in America, studies say, have been sexually abused at some point in their life. 1 out of 10 men have been sexually abused. And 90% of all sexual abuse goes unreported. So it happens, and nobody says anything about it. It's never brought up for a variety of reasons. Let me offer maybe 2 reasons, 2 fictitious families and scenarios. One, a 10-year-old girl, parents entertaining friends, a party at their house. She goes upstairs to her room. She's followed by one of her dad's good friends. And her dad's good friend tries to undress her and tries to touch her. She's able to get away, but she knows that if she tells her dad's going to get mad at her. Her dad will not believe her. Her dad is close with his friend, right? Doesn't want to believe his friend did anything wrong. And that's something that she suffers with for years and holds against her dad. Are you as parents and grandparents, can your children and grandchildren come to you openly and safely to say this? Hopefully you have created that relationship and environment in your own home where, if necessary, your children can say what's going on in their lives with respect to this. Second scenario, Ed. Robert's brother, Ed, sexually abused 3 of their sisters when they were growing up, and he has 3 daughters now. He's married, Ed, and he's probably abused 2 of them as well. So the children, there are many cousins as well in this big family, many cousins, many nieces and nephews of Ed. The family knows all about what Ed did, kind of come out in the family. They all talk about it. Nobody tells Ed about it. When Robert's wife, the in-law, wanted to talk about Ed and said, we need to do something and turn Ed in, her husband says, no, it's going to bring shame to the family. Let's just keep it all quiet. Doesn't seem like anything's going on right now. She wants to bring it up, but she's afraid of shame to the family. So no one does anything about it. Does Ed continue abusing or not? We don't know, but he still is free and doesn't know that anybody knows what he was doing. At some point, we need to stop the cycle of abuse in our families. Even if you're not a mandated reporter by California law, you need to do something so that it does not continue in families. What can be done? What is being done? When will you stop hearing about all this? Well, hopefully less and less from the Catholic Church, although we tend to hear more and more about it in the news, right? Not a day goes by when this is not in our newspapers, at least. Maybe it's being brought out more and more in society so we can root it out and deal with it and overcome it as well. Please let me know, especially after Mass, if you desire another forum so we can talk more of a dialogue. This is only monologue, right? This is only one direction. Let me know if you want to talk more about this in the future. I'm willing to meet with people, maybe have a group or individually, whatever it is that you want to do. If I can help you in some ways, And just as importantly, or more so, you need to talk about abuse in your own life. Please let me know. We can talk about that as well. Can get you or somebody you know help through our diocese. Just reminding you, though, that if you tell me about the abuse or I suspect, I need to report it to law enforcement or CPS because I'm a mandated reporter. None of us can go back in time and change the past. We can't change how the church responded 15 or 25 or 50 years ago. If we knew then what we knew now, we would have reached out to victims right away. We would have turned abusing priests over to authorities. We would have worked harder to create safe environments. Everything that we're doing right now. Yes, the abuse of children was always wrong, always sinful. And of course, the bishops knew that it was wrong and sinful. And some didn't do enough, maybe some did nothing. I'm not sure any bishop wanted to see children abused any more than you and I ever wanted to see that. None of us can change the past, but we can learn from the past. And I think the Catholic Church in America has learned more, the hard way, the hardest way, learned more about abuse than any other institution in the world, and single-mindedly does everything in its power to protect children, maybe more so than any other church, institution, or government agency in the world, the Catholic Church in America. In the gospel today, Peter falls at the feet of Jesus and he says, "Leave me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." Peter knows his weakness, he knows his sin, he knows his unworthiness before Jesus. And Jesus implicitly says, no, I know your sin, I know your weakness, I know your unworthiness, and I'm still not going to leave you. I think from time to time we fall at the feet of Jesus. Maybe our bishops have fallen at the feet of Jesus. Our church falls at the feet of Jesus and says, "Leave me. I'm a sinful church. I have good and I have bad, but I'm sinful. I'm weak. I'm unworthy." And time after time, Jesus' response to you, to me, to the church is, "No, I will not leave you, not because of your sin,